What is up, y'all? Welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to be working on the DY12, the Derya DY12, on the basic field strip disassembly and reassembly process. So you will only need two tools for this disassembly and reassembly: the provided Derya multi-tool and the Allen key that they do include with your shotgun when you purchase it. So first things first, always remove your magazine. No live ammunition on your workbench. We are going to remove our chamber flag, put this aside. We are empty, no magazines in the chamber, no ammunition on our bench. We are safe to commence. So the process of disassembly and reassembly of the Derya shotgun, it's lengthy, but it is definitely simple enough to do at home. So first things first, you want to remove your barrel shroud. Your barrel shroud does act as your barrel nut. You want to loosen, traditional loosening to the left, and unthread it completely and remove it out the front of our shotgun. Next, we're gonna remove our handguard. Our handguard, you just need to grip, pull forward, and remove out the front of our firearm. Set this guy aside. Next, we're going to get the retaining nut for our piston assembly. You're just gonna loosen that up, same way, lefty, lefty-loosey, and remove our retaining nut out the front of our firearm. So next, we're gonna have to lock back our charging handle. Lock back by pulling back on our charging handle, and on the opposite side, on our bolt hold open lever, we're gonna pull that out, release the charging handle so it's retained in place. That will give us access to our piston sleeve to slide down enough to take out the retaining clips. There's two of them on here. There's two retainers. They're half clamshell or half moon shaped. Remove one from one side and the opposite from the other side. Okay, that will allow us to remove our piston sleeve out the front of our barrel, out the front, and gives us access to our piston, which also removes from the front of our assembly. And then our charging tube, which is part of the gas system. This basically pushes back on your bolt. When fired, piston is pushed back from inertia from the firing of the gases from the shotgun shells, pushing back on our charging handle tube, pushing back on our bolt, completing the cycle. So now we can remove our tube out the front of our assembly, and now what's left is to remove our barrel and bolt. So to do so, we're going to release our bolt forward. We're going to get our Allen key provided with our kit, and there are two set screws within the front of our lower receiver. So our lower receiver has a tab towards the front. There is a little hole right there with threading. Inside of that threading, there are two Allen keys, or two Allen screws. They're set screws. So we want to put your key in there. We're going to remove screw number one, and there is an additional screw in there. And we remove screw number two. These are just set screws. They're put in place to retain the barrel from shifting forward, even though it does have a lock nut to keep it in place in the receiver. So that is our two set screws. Now we can lift up our Derya. I'm gonna lock this guy back for now. Now we use our barrel nut wrench to remove our barrel nut from the front. If you can tell, there is the front section that has 3 pin cutouts which line up with our barrel lug up front. From the top, gets into the cutout, and you're going to loosen. You're just going to loosen your barrel nut. Once loose, we can remove our barrel nut. All right, so at this point, we're going to let our bolt go forward, and we're going to separate our upper from our lower. We're going to do this by pushing in on the rear pin in, pulling from the opposite side out till it bottoms out, and then front pin in, pull out on the opposite side out. And that will allow us to separate our upper from our lower. Now we're just going to concentrate on the upper. So now at this point we can pull our bolt rearward, and there is no tension, so we can actually keep it in place. So once we have our 2 halves separated, you're gonna push that bolt back. Now there's no tension on it because it's not in its assembly, so there's no spring tension pushing back forward. So we keep this towards the rear. We're gonna flip our assembly on its back, and you're gonna grab your barrel, grab your receiver in the other hand, and separate your barrel from your receiver. Once you're done doing that, now you can take out your charging handle, pull straight out, and push your bolt forward and out the front of your receiver. This is 2 pieces, so when you remove, this is your assembly. You lift up your bolt from your carrier, and now you have your whole upper receiver disassembled. Whether it is to service clean, because now you have access to your whole receiver on the inside to brush out and clean if you need to do so. Clean up all your parts, clean your barrel, your piston system that will get dirty over time from use. Make sure to keep this clean in order for your weapon to cycle properly. All right guys, so now we're going to tackle the lower section, and we put the upper aside for the moment just so we have a clear open area so you guys could get a better view of what's going on without as much clutter. So on the lower, all you really have to disassemble for any sort of maintenance sake or just to disassemble would be the buffer tube, buffer and spring, so you can gain access to it so you can either service or replace. All right, to do so, all you need is the included Derya tool. The top section that has the 3 cutouts will match up with your castle nut ring on the back of your buffer tube. So you just line up those and you loosen it. That way you can loosen the rest of the way, loosen completely. Then we're gonna move back our end plate, and it might be a little stiff at first, but you can work it back a bit. There we go. And then you just rotate your stock off. Now make sure when you're rotating, you're keeping pressure towards the front of the buffer. So remember, it's spring loaded under tension, so that way you can kind of capture it when you completely take the threads off as such. And now you have access to your buffer and your buffer spring in order to do any servicing. Likewise, if you need to flip the orientation of your sling plate, you can now flip it to the right or left depending on your preference for orientation. But this gives you access to clean out your buffer tube, your buffer spring, and your buffer. So that basically brings down your lower to where you would basically need to get it field stripped. All right guys, so that's it for the disassembly of the Derya DY12, and now we're gonna get into the reassembly process. So first thing you're gonna want to do is get your stock assembly and your end plate, and you're gonna put your end plate onto your buffer tube, followed by the spring and the buffer. All right, next you're gonna guide it to the back of your lower, let it get captured itself onto the unit, and you're gonna compress the whole thing in while you rotate to catch threads again. You're just gonna screw this until basically you'll feel it bottom out. So we're just gonna continue. All right, so once it bottomed out, you can't turn it anymore. You're gonna back it up to make sure that it's vertical. Once you have it vertical, you're gonna get your end plate, move it forward to where it lines up with that protrusion on the bottom. All right, so right here at the bottom, you see there's a little nub on the back of the lower receiver, which corresponds to the hole on the end plate. So you're gonna line those two up to where it's captured, and then you can rotate your castle nut and tighten it to keep the whole assembly in place and preventing it from loosening or shifting. All right, get your tool again, line it up, and give it a final little snug, and that completes the lower's reassembly. Now we'll move on to the upper reassembly and putting everything back together. So first thing that we are going to do, because the bolt assembly on this shotgun is a little bit different than traditional shotgun assemblies. So you're gonna get your carrier, bolt carrier, and your bolt. You're gonna set your bolt on top of your carrier where it can slide back and forth. See, if you see on the cutout on the carrier, there's a notch in the middle. Make sure that when you put your bolt on top, if you slide back, it'll lock up, forward, unlock. Okay, so make sure that the position is correct. Okay, we have movement, so we are good. Now we're gonna get our receiver, and you're gonna insert your carrier from the front of the receiver, guide it on its guides, and push it in. We're gonna retain our bolt in place with our charging handle. So we're gonna push our charging handle in. That will retain it from sliding back out. And we're just gonna put this guy in the rear position so we can install our barrel. Now on our barrel, if you notice, there is an extension towards the back of that barrel hood. That extension corresponds to the cutout in the front of our receiver on the inside. There's a notch which is hollow. Hollow notch corresponds to that nub or extension on our barrel. That's what's going to index the position of our barrel so it's set where it needs to be. So when you slide that guy in, you're going to slide from the front, and when you're in, you'll notice that that nub or extension on the barrel hood lines up with our cutout, and we can push it all the way home. Okay, now we can put our bolt forward, and we're going to stand up our assembly. You're going to get your barrel nut. You're going to insert your barrel nut from the front of your barrel all the way to the rear, and we're going to start it off by hand so we don't cross thread. It should let you screw most of the way in, so we are careful not to cross thread. Once we've done that, we're going to get our Derya provided tool, line up our keys, and we're going to snug up our barrel nut. It doesn't have to be super tight. It just has to be tight enough to hold our assembly in place. Once we snug it down, now we have to put in our set screws. So either one, put in first, and we're going to insert it on that extension until it bottoms out. It's just a safety measure so our barrel doesn't shift forward, just in case that barrel nut comes loose for whatever reason, which it shouldn't with this little safety measure they got on there. Followed by our second set screw, which is just there to retain the first one from backing out. So next we're going to get our slide or our slide extension, and we're going to insert, making sure that both of these two pegs are facing rearward on the installation, because this is basically our extension to our carrier, which pushes on our bolt when the gas piston is pushed back. So we're going to insert as such towards the rear, followed by piston of your choice, whether you're doing the light or the heavy. You'll get your piston and slide your piston in place, followed by your piston sleeve, followed by your retaining clips or retaining rings that are half shelled. You put one on one side, the other on the opposite side, and at that point you can bring up that sleeve slightly just to retain it in place, and we get our retaining nut for that sleeve. Insert from the front, and you're just gonna hand tighten. You don't have to crank down on it, just snug it up, and that is good to go. Make sure that everything is loose and moving. Your piston sleeve will retain in place because now it's screwed in with that retaining nut, but everything else should move freely, so we know that everything is set properly. All right, at this point you can install your handguard by inserting from the front. Remember, that tab goes towards the bottom. Insert from the front, slide all the way to the rear, sit in place, and then we're gonna get our barrel shroud, which also doubles as our lock nut. And we're gonna insert from the front and just tighten to keep our handguard in place, and just tight. All right, now we can put both of our halves together again. All right, so to do so, we're gonna start off at an angle, get our front started. Okay, and once you get that front started, push back, straight down and back, and we're gonna push both our pivot pins in, front pivot pin, rear pivot pin, and quick function check. Everything's moving free, nothing's binding up, so we are good to go. And that is the full reassembly process of the Derya DY12. Guys, if you enjoyed this video, hit the thumbs up. If you haven't done so already, hit the subscribe button, hit the little bell notification so YouTube lets you know when we release new content on our channel. Again, thank you guys for watching. Catch you on the next one. Peace.